Um, I don't have to tell you the Parsha of the week. I'm sure you're learning it. Although the part that I want to speak about you probably didn't get to yet. This is the last Parsha of the Akedah. And I want to discuss the Akedah. You all know what the Akedah is. This is what we call the epitome. Epitome means the highest and the deepest level of an Nisoyin that Avraham Avinu went through. At that time, Avraham was 137 years old. He started Avodas Hashem from 3 years old. As it says that at 3 years old, Avraham Avinu already began trying to understand what's going on, trying to pin down the truth. At 40, he already recognized the truth. And that's when he started doing his Avodah openly. In other words, this is talking about 97 years of concerted effort and working already after he recognized, after he came to his conclusion. And throughout these 97 years, the little bit that we know, what the Torah relates openly, and how much more was there that is not mentioned in the Torah because it wasn't that necessary for future generations. Avraham Avinu was constantly being led by Hashem in a way that his inner convictions and his inner powers will be revealed. In other words, it wasn't a smooth sail. As we discussed a little bit last week, then finally, as we mentioned last week, he came to this highest level of last week. Then he came to Bris Milah. Bris Milah, everybody knows what that is. Bris Milah is what brought Avram. It's the Seder last week started from leave your home, leave your family, which means make a break with your past, as we discussed last week. But that was only a break in action. At the end of last week, it was a break, what's called indelible. Indelible means it cannot be wiped off. You make a bris, that's a stamp in the very person himself, for all generations. So you would think that Avram has reached already the highest level. He has now merited to have a godly stamp in his very body, in his very physique. Then come Parshas Vayeyroh. And Parshas Vayeyroh is also full, replete. Replete means a lot of different experiences that Avram had. All the way to the point where in order to safeguard Yitzchak, to give Yitzchak a pure chinuch, that Yitzchak should not be contaminated by his connection and his relationship to his quote-unquote brother, Yishmael. This also you didn't learn yet, but probably you know it from previous years, but briefly, for those who are not familiar, what happened in this parsha, Yitzchak was finally born, and Sarah saw how Yishmael, who was also living in Avram's house, but Yishmael was not Yitzchak. Yishmael had completely different neshama, different soul, different attitudes. And Yishmael was seemingly playing with Yitzchak, but in this play, Yitzchak was being exposed to things that Sarah thought he should not be exposed to. And Yishmael started talking to Yitzchak in terms of, we are brothers, we share Avraham. And then Yishmael started talking to Yitzchak that we not only share, but I'm the older brother. In other words, the purity of the Jewish nation was being challenged. And Sarah said to Avram, Yishmael cannot be in your home. This was, you can imagine, a very difficult test for Avram. And the Torah, as a matter of fact, says clearly, you will learn it in Mitzvah Shem Thursday, that Avram, it says, Vayeyroh me'od Avram, it was very difficult. Avram felt it was very, very difficult to send Yishmael out of the house. In addition to the fact that he was his son and all that, but Avram was a soft person. Avram was a person of mercy and kindness. And here he had to stand up and say, you have to go out of the house. And this was a requirement, so to speak, of what's called a a distant view, because Sarah saw far what is destined, what is going to be in the future. At this time, Yitzchak was still a small child. But Yitzchak was a pure from birth. He was the first one born a Jew. He was the first one to have a bris milah at 8 days. He has the real covenant with Hashem. And Sarah said we have to insist that Yitzchak is perfectly pure, because he is the basis for the Jewish people. And therefore, regardless of how difficult it is, that's what we have to do. And Avram did it. So, as I said, it wasn't a smooth sail. And on top of all that, after all that, came the Akedah, the Nisoyin Akedah. Nisoyin Akedah is the first time, even though we know that Avram was constantly being tested, quote unquote, was constantly being brought out deeper and deeper. But here the Torah clearly says, this is a Nisoyin. Halakim Nisas Avram. It clearly says. Because this type of a thing, this is not a natural phenomenon. It's not something that happens naturally. When Yishmael was playing with Yitzchak and Sarah didn't like how they played, this was a natural thing. There's Yishmael in the house, there's Yitzchak in the house. Now, what are you going to do? How do you safeguard Yitzchak from Yishmael's influence? The same thing earlier when Avram had to go to Mitzrayim because there was a famine. All of these things were kind of hidden nisyonis. It happened naturally. But here there was nothing natural about it. Avram was told directly by the name of Hashem, you start the whole thing. You take Yitzchak. You go to A Vayeyroh, to a land that I'm going to show you. To A Vayeyroh, to the mountain that I'm going to show you. And over there, you should bring him as an offering, as a sacrifice. The whole thing was, was completely out of line, out of whack. And the Nisoyin Akedah is so profound, as we'll discuss. Rashi says right in the beginning, Hashem says to Avram, Kach no esbincha. No means please. Please take your son. What is the please? Hashem doesn't speak to Avram in the form of please. So Rashi says, and Hashem said, I really ask you, I beg you, please go through this Nisoyin, because this Nisoyin will substantiate. Substantiate, everybody knows what substantiate will show the truth and the power of all the previous. And if you fail in this one, then they will say that all the previous also were not real. They were real nisyonis, but they didn't come from a real basic power of the soul, because you weren't able to stand this. This was like the epitome. This nisoyon ha'akeda, in addition to all the difficulties that it presented to Avraham, so Avraham was a big tzaddik. Avraham had dedicated his life to disseminating, to teaching people about God. This was his life. However, Avraham understands the Akedah. He doesn't understand the Akedah, but he's Avraham. But then it comes to us, down to us. The Torah writes it down to us. We should know that Avraham had such an issue. When it comes down to us, and we start reading it, we start learning it, and it boggles the mind. It shakes us up. What is this all about? What for? What kind of statement is this? How does it make sense that Hashem should tell Avraham, go shech Yitzchak? We know, later on you will learn, and for those who already learned last year, that when the Torah speaks about A Vayeyroh, idol worship, or generally other faiths, other beliefs, Torah says that they are abominations, disgusting things, pratzivim. And the Torah says, it illustrates, it says how low they are, because their children they sacrifice to their gods. That's what it says. Gam bnei Yisrael yizbechu ba'eish leilayeh. Because they sacrifice their own children to their gods. It's an abomination. It's mind-boggling. That's how you serve God, by sacrificing your child. What kind of service is this? What kind of God? What kind of mentality? What kind of philosophy is this? So, although, as we learn, as you will see, that actually the words that Hashem used in giving Avraham the instructions to go and do the Akedah, the words were very, very carefully chosen, so that it is clear that Hashem never said to Avraham to actually shecht him. He said, Alehu means bring him up there, and then bring him down. In other words, there was not ever a clear statement that he should take Yitzchak's life. The implication and the simple understanding was that he should shecht him, but it wasn't a statement that you should shecht him. So in other words, Hashem never said these words actually. But nevertheless, there is the implication. And we need to understand, what is this about? What for, and what did it accomplish?
Don't you have to do lots of initials sometimes?
Yeah. Of course, Abraham, there's no question you have to do Nasir Nishma. Nevertheless, everything, especially an Yisoyin that Hashem gives to a person, especially to Avraham, to every person, has a specific purpose. It isn't just do a mishugas. You know what a mishugas is? Everything has a specific purpose. and it has to be something, and I said, particularly when it comes down to us, and we learn about it. And we also learn that to sacrifice your children is an abomination, is a disgusting thing, that is completely incongruous, does not fit with service of God. In the Torah we have a klal. A klal means a rule, an all-encompassing rule that goes across the entire Torah. That pikuach nefesh doiches kol ha-Torah kula. That pikuach nefesh means to save a life. Everything breaks down. Shabbos, Yom Tov, you don't consider anything. When it comes to saving a life, you have to go without hesitation. It says if somebody stops for a second to think, it's a Shabbos, should I do it? He is called a Ritzayach.
Except 3 mitzvahs.
Excuse me?
Except 3 mitzvahs. Except 3 mitzvahs. 3 mitzvahs.
Except for three mitzvahs. Right, except for 3 mitzvahs. The 3 mitzvahs is that you're obligated to give your life to on these mitzvahs. But in this mitzvahs, that is only when these mitzvahs are meant to draw you away from God. In other words, if it's done intentionally to break you away, to make you sin. You understand? But if it's not done intentionally to make you sin, let's say, if a goy tries to force you to do an Avera, but for his own gain, not to break away from the mitzvahs, you're not even obligated then. Except for Itzicha. Itzicha is something else. Itzicha means killing somebody else. So the Torah says, who says that your blood is more red than the other person's blood? So this is completely foreign from Jewish thought. And the Torah says, Hashem himself says to Abraham, go, please go. And therefore, we ought to reflect and understand what, and clearly the Akedah had a very deep, very profound effect on the Jewish people, on Avraham, on Yitzchak, and it had a very deep effect for all Jewish people for all times. In simple terms, in essence, so to speak, at first glance, it's clear, as we discussed last week, I believe, that the Jewish people, the Torah that Hashem gave to us, and the mitzvahs that we have, are very different than the mitzvahs that non-Jews have. They also have mitzvahs from Hashem, 7 mitzvahs, but they're completely different. They have a completely different meaning. The mitzvahs that they have are mitzvahs that have as their purpose the maintenance, the maintaining a normal civil life in the world. So essentially it is for the maintenance of the world. Whereas the mitzvahs that we have is to serve God directly, not the world. We don't serve God, the world. We serve God directly. The Akedah, made that very clear. Not that it made that clear, only clear as a message, but the Akedah had imbued her own drilled in. I say drilled in. Okay. The Akedah had forced and through in the Jewish people this principle. Because here, what happened in the Akedah, it was a clear thing that Avraham was able, not only able, but he actually did take Yitzchok and he put him on the Mizbeach, and he says, there is no such thing as having a son if Hashem does not want him. I want a son, and I love him dearly, but only if Hashem wants me to have him. And if Hashem says, put him on the Mizbeach, then I put him in the Mizbeach. So this established this level of avodas Hashem, of the service of Hashem in the Jewish people for all generations by this action on the Akedah. Now, having said that, having understood that that's quite obvious, that this kind of changed the entire perspective, where Avram's, Yitzchok and Yankov, and for all generations, the Jewish life is a life that is Belech Lecha, that is separate from the world, that live on a different plane, a different level. What I want to do now is try to understand what is so great about that. What's wrong with living a normal worldly life and not steal and not rob and not lie and not kill and live a normal life? It seems that in order to accomplish this union, to achieve this union, everything is worth it. Even to take your son and put him on the Mizbeach. And only the last instant Avram was stopped. But Avram, it's a word I didn't understand. So say it loud. Which word?
Accomplish.
Accomplish, no?
Prestige.
Okay. So you should say it. In order to get this, everything is worth it.
Would they have a normal life?
Huh?
They have a normal life?
No, in order to achieve this avodas Hashem at this level, we see that everything is, you're ready to give everything away. And I'm asking, why? What's the significance of this? We know from Jewish history, and we don't have to go very far. We can go just back a generation, 2 generations, and all the way back. As we go, we always see the same pattern. We always see the same thing. The Jewish people, throughout the ages, and we're talking about thousands of years, under completely different circumstances, different governments, different systems. Whatever it was, the Jewish people always were a target. They always suffered. But if it was a religious government, so they hated Jews because they didn't conform to their religion. If it was an atheistic government, so they hated Jews because they're religious. Whatever it is, the Jews were always singled out. And what was the reaction of the Jewish people? How did Jewish people take that? The Jewish people didn't like it at all. They didn't ask for it. They wished that they should be left alone. But they never considered that perhaps we should give it up. We should live like all the other people. And we won't behave it. In other words, there is something of a tremendous significance, tremendous value in this gift that we have, that no matter what, whatever difficulty, we're ready to go through all the difficulties in order to maintain this. There was never a question. There was never a question that a Yid should envy. What envy? Yeah. A goy, because he's got it. He doesn't have the persecution. Never. Persecution. I'm sorry?
Isn't that normal to expect that you would envy the fact that this is not being persecuted?
Do again?
But isn't that
normal to
a
expect?
normal feeling like that you would envy someone just because he's not being persecuted? Like
But they knew why they were not being persecuted. They also wished that they wouldn't be persecuted. But the envy means that you would like to be in his shoes. They never wanted to be in his shoes. Never existed. Never existed. This Indian, to understand this thoroughly, really requires a much broader discussion. But we can put it, so to speak, we can focus in and understand what's behind it. Step away from this, and I'll go into an analogy, something that in a much simpler level, which we discussed also many times. We all know that a person wants to be free. He wants to live in freedom. And to be in prison is one of the most painful things for a person to be in. To be in jail, to be in prison is one of the most painful things. It is so painful that in the Torah, the punishment of imprisonment doesn't exist. You know why? Because it is too painful for a human being. It's more painful than death. What's imprisonment? What's so painful in imprisonment? So this we can readily relate to on a simple human level. Whenever I ask people and say, tell me, what's wrong with the prison? He says, well, I can't go wherever I want. I go out my house, I can go right out, I can go wherever I want. In prison, I'm being blocked off. I can only be within these walls. I can't go out. Again, I want you to understand that this question applies not only in the Russian dungeons, but even a normal civilized society prison. But in the prisons, in the federal prisons in here in America, the people, generally speaking, live a normal human life. They even play basketball, okay, and they watch television, and they take walks. They have a normal life. They're in prison. So you say, what's missing? Your food is provided for you. You have a bed to sleep on. You can communicate with people. You can even enjoy your sport. What's wrong with being in prison? So you say that, oh, but I can't go wherever I want. So then I asked a question which I discussed one time at great length here. When the prisoner is let out free, what does he do the first thing? Does he start running the streets back and forth? Wherever I wasn't able to go to, now I can run free. Is that what he does? The first thing he does is go home. He goes to an address and he stays there. So the freedom of maneuver, the freedom of movement is not the pain of imprisonment. What in fact is the pain of imprisonment? The pain of imprisonment is a human being has a soul. His soul is answers means is indebted, is connected, is bound. How do I? Right. Only directly to God Himself. He cannot tolerate to be bound by something less than the whole truth. I explained one time, it says in Hadyom Yom, I'm sure you will come across it. It says that one of the great blessings that Hashem did for the human being is that a human being can see the sky. Animals that walk on all fours, they can go through a lifetime, never see the sky. They look down to the ground. A human being cannot escape but to see the sky, because as he's walking, you see the earth and you see the sky all the time. What's so great about the sky? So there are many things about the sky, but one obvious thing is that he immediately relates to open space, to infinity. He's not bound by the enclosure, by the limit where he is. There's a din in Shulchan Aruch that a Beis HaKnesses, a shul where people daven, should have many, many windows so that people can look out and see the sky. So the halacha explains it in very specific terms, but in general, it simply means that one's heart and mind opens up, because he senses that he relates to what's called infinity. That's the human soul. A human being, by nature, wants to be responsible only to that which is the truth, not to another human being, not to anything that limits him, only to the truth. What is right and what is wrong, to that which he believes is the truth. this is true about a human being in general. The Jewish people were uniquely given a different kind of a soul, that to them, to be free in the world is not freedom. As we discussed one time before, that when God took us out of Egypt, from Mitzrayim, when we were slaves, so he says that I took you out of the house of slavery and brought you to me, and now you are my servants. So we ask the question, is that freedom? If Hashem took us out from the slavery of Egypt and made us His servants, His slaves, and the answer is that this is the true freedom. To be in the world is not true freedom. Why not? In a very brief, the world does not present to the soul a true value. What does it mean? Everything in the world, no matter how good and how great, everything in the world has to have an additional purpose, an additional reason for it to be. It does not have a purpose of its own. Obviously, this needs more elaboration, but I just want to come to the point that this principle, that the Jewish people are dedicated to the service of God in such an extreme way, where they're completely not associated to the world itself, but just directly to the service of God, this is inherent in the very Jewish soul, and this in fact is the greatest gift that Hashem can give to human beings. So even though it seems quite demanding, like by Avraham Avinu, he had to go through a lot of nisayonos to get there, all the way to the point where he had to take his son and put him on the altar. And the Jewish people went through a history of tremendous sacrifices. But we as Jews have this one principle in mind, one principle in life, that to live a lifetime, live 120 years without a meaningful purpose is not life. Even if you have everything you need, you have your food and you have your drink and you have your home, you have everything in the world. The world per se does not give any significance in my life. On the other hand, as it says, one moment of true life, one moment of understanding of Torah, one moment of true understanding of our Inyan of Chassidus, one moment of reflection of the truth of God, that moment is an infinite moment. Never ends. That has the quality of infinity. It never ends. During the most bitter moments of Jewish history, during the Holocaust, when the Jewish people were led into gas chambers by the German monsters, during that moment, the Jew who went into this chamber, and they went into the chamber saying Shema Yisrael, he at that moment considered himself infinitely superior. Greater. And this moment of his life was to him infinitely more than the whole life that the German had. There was no comparison. There was no comparison whatsoever. He had a real life. He had a real meaning, a real insight to what life is. He really knew about the infinity of life, the infinity of the neshama, of the soul. And this was a human being who became a monster. There was no comparison. In order to provide the Jewish people with this type of insight. No. Understand. Yeah. Recognition. To be able to understand this, to be able to relate to this, Avraham Avinu had to go through the Nisoyin HaKedah. Where the Nisoyin HaKedah, Yitzchok went unto the altar, unto the Mizbeach, and he said, clearly, he says, right now, I'm really living. I'm being put on the altar, and I'm being shechted. This is where I'm living, because I'm now fulfilling, I'm now connecting to the real essence of existence, to Meibushim himself. This is why it's interesting that after that Avraham, the Malach stopped Avraham and said, no, don't touch him. Don't shecht him. So then Avraham saw this ram running towards him, the ayil. And he went to the ram and he made a korban oila from him. And there it says, Vayalehu le'oila tachas b'noi, that he brought him in place of his son, instead of his son. So Rashi says over there that what Avraham did was that he said, as he was doing all the activities of the korban, he was asking Hashem, please let this be considered like my son is going through this. He is being shechted, his blood is being thrown on the Mizbeach, and he is being burnt on the Mizbeach. What's the pshat in this? What's the significance of that? That actually, even though Avraham, in fact, did not shecht Yitzchok, that's only because Hashem took him to himself. But Yitzchok now belongs to Hashem, as if he was already on the korban. Yitzchok, and then his children for all generations are belong to Hashem. And there is no way, there is absolutely no way that a Yid should go through a life in this world and not know about Hashem, not be connected to Hashem, and have perfect and be happy. There's no way, because a Yid is a stranger in this world if he doesn't know how to serve Hashem in this world. He's a total stranger. All that he does in this world is based on what Hashem instructed us in the Torah, what he should do, and so forth. In other words, every Yid is like coming off the altar, coming off the Mizbeach. And now he's doing what he has to do. But he's not doing it for himself. And this is illustrated by the history that we have, many examples, where we have Yidden who have been successful in the world, in business, or in professions, whatever it is, very successful. And after all that success, they're always unhappy. And they think they're unhappy because of this, because of that. I once mentioned an interesting phenomenon, that when a Yid has a Yid who made it in the world, who is wealthy, and he has a boat, and his neighbor, the Goy, also has a boat. It's almost invariable, it's almost always, that the bigger boat belongs to the Yid. Because he's not satisfied. He has to always go beyond. Because he does not really appreciate this whole thing. This is the inyan, that we are here in Yeshiva. And the Yeshiva is not physically the most beautiful place in the world. And it does not really prepare us to how to make a living, where to make money, and how to establish ourselves in the world. Nothing like that. But what it does give us is an understanding how we should live in the world and be Yidden. And without that, no matter what blessing, what successes we should have, we will always be unhappy. And if we know how to be Yidden, then no matter what we have, we will feel fortunate and blessed. And every moment of our lives is going to be a real moment of life. And this is what we accomplish, this is what we get in Yeshiva. The Yeshiva gives us the opportunity to not only to learn about Yiddishkeit, but to live Yiddishkeit. And this experience, this living of Yiddishkeit, puts us in the world, in Mitzvah Hashem, in a completely different way, where we are in control of what we're doing, and we know what we want to do, and and whatever we pursue in the world has meaning, not just because we have to. We are bound by it. So that the year, the 2, the 3 years in the yeshiva gives a Yidden such a solid, sound approach and understanding of life that then he can go through anything. And he will always know that who he is, and what he is, why he has difficulty, what is the purpose of all the nisyonos and all the trials that he is going through. And he will always have the strength to go through it and to find the right way to act under all circumstances. And of course, the Rebbe should have the help that we should not have to go through trials. Everybody should have a blessed life and go smoothly. And that smooth life should also be with meaning. It should also be established on the foundations of Torah and Mitzvah. This is the Rebbe's blessing. The standard blessing to Chos and Kala was always that their home should be established on the foundation of Torah and Mitzvah. Because the foundation of Torah and Mitzvah in Jewish life, this is the foundation of success and happiness. Without that, there cannot be success and cannot be happiness. So the Rebbe should help, should give us all his success. Right now, you're on the altar. You're away from the world. You're on the Mizbeach. And you have to sap in and get inside, get inside all the inspiration that moment gives. And this will give you strength in Mitzvah Shem to build your homes in the most beautiful and bright way. L'chaim.